Hi, everyone. Welcome back to part 2 of Sticky Fingers and Sticking Your Landing. As you know from the first part, and if you didn't listen to part 1, you need to listen to that before this. I felt like I hadn't done a complete job of teaching. And Larry, welcome back. And thank you for coming. And I want to tell you the funniest thing that I felt. I actually felt what a pitcher might feel like when you take the ball from him just because he walked someone. I mean, I did not like my performance. Okay. And I just didn't have it that day. I think that was really it. I think it's once I started talking about it, I started realizing I wanted to do more with photos and training, etc. And when I was pulled from the game and when it was over, I was miserable for days. And then when I realized, hey, why don't I just do part 2? Because as you know, and for everyone who's listening, I told Larry, I said, I'm just going to thrash the whole episode. But then I didn't want to lose all the great information that Larry had given. And so anyway, long story short, I came up with this solution of part 2, which was, I wish I'd had it 4 days sooner. But the funniest thing is I've learned so much from my pitchers, but this is one thing I never thought I'd learn. But so, Coach, thanks for giving me the ball for another inning because I appreciate it. It's not like I got out of the inning, but I gave up too many walks, and I knew I could do better. So, wow, what an interesting experience this has been. So anyway, we're going to jump right in. But Larry, before we even start this, I want to talk to you about this front leg thing. So everybody, the reason why I'm so passionate about this front leg issue, especially now, is that, as you know from the last episode, I was pretty hyped up about defending the pitchers. I think they're being put in a funny situation. It looks funny to me when they're, checked on the field. But what I really made the connection to is more than ever, pitchers have to have control over the ball. And as I said in the last podcast, hitters are always making adjustments. They're always, and when announcers are critiquing hitting style, they're saying, look at the way he puts the front foot down. Look at the stability he has in his back leg. Look at the way his hands come through. Look at the consistency and the repeatability. Look at the way he winds around his front leg. They say the exact same things as what we want pitchers to do. And I thought to myself, given all the issues going on with them saying they can't hang on to the ball, and given the fact that I am in the school of let's teach it right, I'm very passionate about this issue because one, everything starts from the ground up. Two, the pitcher can hang on to the ball better if he's not balancing his body from falling over. And three, this is what I want to say to you, Larry, because you're in your recruiting phase right now, right?
Correct.
And so when you're looking at, you don't have somebody there with you that's analyzing mechanics. I mean, I know you're looking for what he does around the plate, but here's the thing that I think is so important for coaches to know. And this is kind of a caveat that I want to start with. We all know that there are great pitchers that have not great mechanics. They throw strikes, they get the job done. Some of them are in the pen and some are not. Even scouts or coaches will say, oh, I got this guy. Wow, he looks crazy, but he gets the job done. And so the deal is, whenever I'm talking about mechanics and teaching, I'm not saying, hey, you have to do it this way to be good. No, absolutely not. There are many pitchers who get it done no matter what. But as an instructor of mechanics, I do and have a responsibility ethically and also personally to teach it correctly and also to teach it within the framework of what we want for good mechanics. So, Larry, today when I talk about this, and I'm going to do it so much more thoroughly because we've got tons of visuals, and that's exactly what this is going to be tailored around. One of the things I want to say is if you see a guy with a weird follow through or he's not stabilizing the front leg, but yet he gets the strikes done, he throws great pitches, he does what he's supposed to do, and you like him. That doesn't mean necessarily, oh, wow, he's going to have a problem. But the converse that I would like you to keep in mind is when you see a guy who's got that kind of stability, actually in your head go, wow, he's got more projectability. He's got upside. Because when a pitcher is in control of his delivery, he can deliver a quality pitch, more quality than someone who is not just processing their delivery, not even handling it real well, but just the fact that if he's got some other stuff going on, and I know you're a guy who likes things direct to the plate, if he's got all this movement going on, that pitch, even though it turns out to be quality, may be the top of his game for him. But when you see the guy that's got stability, and I don't know if you saw the MLB draft, but I watched the first four pitchers that came on when they finally went to pitching, which they didn't give much to pitching. These guys had a stable front leg. And then the second the guys got up who didn't look that stable, in fact, most of them looked pretty good, but the first three or four were absolutely stellar with their front leg. And you know what? They were great and they look great. And you all actually could tell, and all the photos were from the front. You could actually tell that they had a little better quality. So when you see the guy who's got it, it means give him extra kudos for that. And that he's got some projectability that may be more than the guy who is a little bit out of control. So I thought that was an interesting thing. And whenever I'm talking about mechanics, I'm never saying, hey, this is how you have to do it. I'm saying this is the efficient way to do it. Just like we know the efficient way to sit in a chair so you don't hurt your back is one way. The efficient way to run is another way. The efficient way to sit or lift a box is another way. All of us who teach those kinds of movements, we do it with the way that's the safest. And by the way, how when you're doing your recruiting, how are you looking at pictures and seeing anything on the front end since we talked about it?
Yeah, oh, absolutely. See it all the time. And usually the way it kind of goes hand in hand. The guys that are a little more stable and a little more direct, a little more under control, usually are the better pitchers. They have better command. Guys that are a little more out of control and or don't have as much stability. Then you got to try to. Is it something you can fix? Is it something you can address? Is it something they're willing to fix or address? It's I don't know. Those are things I notice.
Yes, and what I'm going to do today is so for everybody, here's what you're going to see. You're going to see more videos and photos than I've ever had in any podcast. This is going to be completely driven around visuals because I'm going to get it right this time. Coach, you're not going to want to take the ball from me. I guarantee you. Okay, but
Good,
I
very
want
nice.
you to give me time to work through it and don't get worried. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. Uh-huh.
But what I've got is not only what to do on the mound, what to do on the field, but what to do in the gym, some ideas. So you can have coaches, get your strength coaches to look at this because this is a movement strength thing. Oh, and the other thing I want to say while we're doing this, and actually Wendell is the greatest podcast editor ever. And he is the guy that I don't give enough kudos to when we're doing our podcast. And he was so willing to redo this one with me and Larry. And Wendell, when you do all of these videos for me, please have them on repeat so people can, because I've got the video on repeat because I want to talk about different things. And we do have live videos, not just still shots. So thank you for that. So, Larry, let's open up the first video and put it on repeat if you can. So, finally, everyone, I was talking to you about Dallas Keuchel. Now, listen, he came out of the pen the other day, but he's usually a starter. You can see him. He's starting. I mean, he just started on Sunday, so his rotation's coming up. So you'll be able to watch him. But listen, there's a lot of great pitchers I've seen recently because I watch baseball news shows that have great front legs, and you're going to start to notice the difference. But anyway, so have you got Dallas up here pitching, Larry?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So what I want you to notice is, and I'm going to show you a still shot 6 frame next. I want you to notice how stable his leg is. And what you're going to notice is his foot and his head have a relationship. Now you have to wait till he finishes his pitch, but his head is actually going right over his foot. And by the way, aren't you happy I have a lefty up here now?
Absolutely. You finally
And
got it
guess
right.
what? I finally got it right for you. And that's because you're coming back to help me get another inning in.
Nice.
I said I owe you something. And
There you
actually,
go.
I got some lefties in some of the demos too. Okay,
Nice.
just so you know.
Nice.
Yeah. So I thank you for coming back. But anyway, so what you're seeing on Dallas is he's from moment one straight and aligned, and you can still see that alignment when he lands. He is clean to the plate. His head and his front foot have a relationship. And if his head and his front foot have a relationship, that means his trunk from his tailbone to the bottom of his neck have the same positioning every time he throws a ball. And what I want to tell everyone is the day that I filmed this, I filmed 4 pitches in a row. And I said, oh, I'm going to show some variations. He looked exactly the same each time. Now, why can he reproduce this pitch? Because if you notice when his front foot lands, it lands and it stays stable. If he was going too hard off the mound downhill, you would see the weight of his body pull his weight forward in his foot. You would see him go onto his toe and fall forward. What that means is he overran his stride. He either didn't know how to stop his weight as it approached the foot, or he pushed too hard for his control of the front leg. The back leg and the amount of drive you get has to match what you're able to do in the front leg. Now, I want you to watch on when he pitches. So what you're going to see right underneath his right glute and into his hamstring, that part of the body is actually in what we call an eccentric contraction. It's actually on stretch when he reaches out, and he doesn't even come into full extension on it. And what that leg is doing is stabilizing the entire motion. So the role of this front leg, and you can easily see it, is to get him down to the bottom of the hill so he's closer, but also his hip joint, which is in the front, like if you put your hands in your pocket, it's and your fingers are spread out, it would be right where his fingertips are in his left pocket. His hip joint, that body is rotating around that leg. Larry, can you see that when I say it that way?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, so he's rotating around that leg. So if that leg isn't stable, he wouldn't be able to have the kind of rotation he has, which is separated, it's in order, and it's completely consistent. And if you've got this on repeat, trust me, if you watch him pitch, you're going to see this exact same thing. Now, if you have the pitcher who lands, and once you see his foot land, you see it spin, then he shifted the weight in his foot. Now, if you remember from the last one, I'm giving Keuchel an A plus. I will give DeGrom an A. Now, why do I give DeGrom an A? Because when he lands, sometimes you'll see that foot spin and he spins on the heel. What that means is when he put his weight completely into his foot, somewhere in the delivery, it shifted. If his heel moves, he shifted too much forward. And if his toe spins, which I don't think his DeGrom's does, that means he pulled his weight backwards. We never want anything to change in the middle of the delivery. So when you walk, you put one leg out, and that back leg gets pulled up on top of the foot that's down, and then that leg goes out, and your weight is pulled up. So, Larry, picture this. You're walking and you step on a stone that you don't see, so your foot can't hit flat. And what happens? Your foot rolls to the outside and you kind of trip a little bit. So, the transfer of weight into the foot is something we do all day long. When you walk up a stair, you put your foot down, the trail leg pulls up on top of that foot, and your complete weight is in that foot. And that allows you to lift the next leg because you have your complete weight in it. So when you think about what we do all day long, and we know that we want to be stable when we're moving around and we take it for granted, that same thing needs to happen in sports motion. And in most sports motions, when you see people performing certain things, you'll see that stability. And in gymnastics, no matter how many things you do in the air, if you don't stick your landing, you lose tons of points. So we're going to give Dallas Keuchel an A+ here because he's got it going on. So let's go to the next. Open up number 2 for me, Larry.
Mm-hmm.
And let's take a look at this still shot. Okay. So, guys, I want everyone to look at this. So, I took 6 frames in a row, and I want you to just track his front leg. So, his front leg is down in the first frame on the left. Now, notice in that frame, and I'm going to be describing some of this stuff in other photos, but you're seeing his foot down. Take your eye up to the knee joint. He's got flexion in that knee, meaning his hamstrings are working. I want you to notice the angle of his thigh. You can tell it's going upward. The knee joint itself has to really be strong. And they've done a lot of research on where should legs be to have a strong knee joint. And we know when we're in the gym, sometimes we do squats and we go real deep and we go different variations. The height that his leg is at, it looks like a kind of a 45-degree angle. That's where you've got so many muscles engaged and many fibers, and everything's at a good length. That knee joint is really strong there. We want to see the pitcher reach out and have a strong leg angle. And then we want to make sure that we don't change that angle during the delivery, but after the ball or simultaneous to that ball release, the leg starts to rise up. So we want to land with a leg that's not low. And just so you know, in this first frame, when his foot hit the ground, that is when the momentum from his body that allowed that foot to hit the ground harder than the way you hit the ground when you're walking and just bring your foot forward, that force pushes into the ground. The ground reaction force comes up into the leg and then we've got the beginning of the rotational phase. So he's sideways, and then you can see he started rotating on top of that leg. So that wasn't his stride foot contact landing position. This is like at the second frame into it. But I want you to see his leg position. Notice now I went sequentially frame by frame. Notice in the second frame, his leg looks exactly the same. Look in the third frame. His leg is exactly the same. And I want you to look in the ball release phase, and you can see that ball can't out of his hand in the photo. He looks exactly the same. Larry, do you see how that brings him to the same release point every time?
No, absolutely. And it's important for obvious reasons. I mean, I think it leads to better command and stuff. It's good. It's quality. It's as good as it gets. The first 4 frames, and that's good. I think that kind of. I mean, you're talking about things that a lot of people. Some people teach guys to lock their front leg out when they rotate the throw, and I've never been a big proponent of that. And this is completely. This is logical. It makes sense. It's like you said, it's efficient. It's safe. It's great. It's awesome.
Right. And just look at the musculature in his body. You can see it working. And does he look like he's in command of his body?
Yeah.
Yes, because what he's doing, and if you remember from the video, and I want everyone to go back to that video after you see all the pictures, and I am going to address that straight leg issue. I'm glad you brought it up.
Mm-hmm.
He's got an elasticity around that front leg. He is literally winding around that leg. So watch it. His foot's down, his foot's down, his foot's down. His foot starts to come up as the ball's out of his hand. Now he's going forward. You can tell he's going forward because in the 5th frame, the second from the right, His trunk is down lower, perfect low back position. Everyone, the safest thing for the follow through, which is the most dangerous part of the motion, it has the most force. The injuries to the back occur here. And we have some great pitchers out there that have a problem in this position, and they're great pitchers, and they complain of back problems, and they don't look like this. In the gym, for all the strength coaches that I hope are going to watch this, we all know this. You have to have a back position like this, and his shoulders are slightly above his hip joint, which means that he's getting that perfect position in his low back where the extensors are actually in the position that they like. Now, he wraps all the way around, and his leg is swinging all the way around, and then it comes down, and he's in a perfect position now to do whatever he needs to do. And in fact, I saw him. He went from this position, and I think he had to cover or do something. But because of his weight placement being so balanced, Larry, he could go in any direction he needed to go in.
Yeah, I think it's huge.
Yeah,
It's
it's
really
really
clean,
huge.
really clean,
Yeah,
really efficient, really
yes,
very nice.
exactly. And so, Dallas, my hat's off to you. So, okay, let's open up the third. Okay, now this is a drill. Now I want to talk about some stuff here. This is a drill. You've seen this in some of my other podcasts. Okay, this is a drill that I designed just to teach pitchers how to go over their front leg. So this is sort of simulating a ball release position. The foot's down and he's going into follow through. Now, if you got this on repeat, Larry?
Yes.
Okay, good. Now, let's talk about this. So, strength coaches, you'll know what I'm talking about. And for everyone listening to this, there is something we use this term in athletics we call triple flexion. Triple flexion is what we want when we have a strong base or athletic position. Look at his foot and look at his ankle. His ankle is near the tongue of his shoe. It's not pulled backward into his shoe, it's near the front of the shoe. That is called a dorsiflexed, or we'll just say a flexed ankle. It's the strongest footing. So when you see someone doing a 3-point start, you're going to see that on their front leg. When you see somebody who's doing something powerfully, let's say he's dropping down in, okay, if you watch, they were measuring broad jumps on the draft. The beginning of the broad jump, a pitcher is going to come down into flexion, and he's going to lower himself before he jumps forward. If he wants to do a vertical jump, he's going to come down, get flexion in his ankle before he comes forward. Matching that is flexion in the knee. So you see how the knee is bent. If that knee was straight, Larry, see how he hesitates at the end of it?
Mm-hmm.
That is because he has muscles behind the knee joint that are working. They're the flexors of the knee, which are the hamstrings. Now, if he were to go up, imagine him straightening that knee. He couldn't balance because he would be right up on top of it. And while he might be able to balance for a second, he's not as strong here. Now, if he straightens it up after finishes his follow through, and some guys do it almost simultaneous, as long as it hasn't compromised him from going forward as far over his leg. See how far over his head is getting over the front of his foot?
Yeah, it's really good.
Okay. So we've got flexion in the ankle, flexion in the knee, and then you see him creasing at his left hip. And what does he have? That perfect position that Dallas had.
Mm-hmm.
That's flexion in the hip. Look at his perfect back position. Now, so if he would straighten it up at the end, Larry, and his leg is totally straight, but he's way over the front, he could pull it off. Probably he would be good at doing it, and he'd probably already have developed the strength to handle that. It's a challenge. This is easier to have a still slight bend in the knee. It also allows you to go over the leg, which is carrying all your body weight. Now, here's what we see, though. Just as the pitcher is in the position that he is in when he starts this drill. This is Scott starting the drill. Instead of going forward, the knee comes backwards. So the whole leg is angling backwards, just the way a hitter pulls his leg backwards. The hitter pulls his leg backwards. You follow me, Larry? The knee's
Mm-hmm.
pulling back
Yes.
because he does not want to go forward over the leg. The hitter pulls his weight backwards to keep his weight back so he can swing. Make sense?
Absolutely.
And I think the reason why we have this awful mechanical problem in pitching. And trust me, if there were orthopedic surgeons and physical therapists sitting around and we were talking about the knee, and I said, what do you think about if a pitcher jams his knee backwards into what we would call extension? His knee would not be over his ankle. And by the way, your knee is always over your ankle for strength. This is a solid, healthy front leg here. When you jam the knee backwards, so the foot's out, the lower leg's angling backwards, the knee is there, and then your body's behind that. Number one, picture where his head would be instead of where it is right now. Picture where his hand would be when he releases the ball if he pulled his body backwards. So you're not releasing as close to the plate as you would if you do it this way. Is that making sense?
Yes, perfect sense.
Yes. And what do kids do before they learn to pitch? They hit. And I think the reason for the allowance of this, that this is acceptable in pitching, is because they know where stability is when they hit, and they hit first. So now they're trying to get stable. Everybody's always searching for stability. So they pull the leg backwards. So when you see pitchers, let's say you get a still shot of a pitcher, if that knee was back, his butt and his center of mass would be way back. His hand is not going to release the ball as close to the plate. It's as simple as that. And I demonstrate this all the time to pitchers. You can just do it from the side, playing around. And believe me, pitchers want to get over that front leg. Also, this is the strength position. And if you can do this, so everyone, this is a drill that you can have your pitchers do and put them on the ground and make them do this. And just how this looks on repeat, that's how I have the guys do it. Just go up and back, up and back. So they're shifting over their front hip. They're coming down into the follow through, and then they just put the leg down the exact way that this looks when it's on repeat. You have them do this flat, then you have them do it on the mound. You have to use the mound when you're talking about front leg stability because, so Larry, see that ankle there?
His left ankle?
His left ankle, right. Mm-hmm. Now, if he were going downhill, just walking, that ankle might not look like that. You know how you kind of reach out?
Mm-hmm.
So the ankle would be an extension. That's the problem with the downhill and why pitchers pull backwards. They don't get their ankle into this position. And when the foot goes downhill, the ankle goes into what we call extension. So picture yourself looking in a mirror and you go up on your toes, both legs. You know how the ankle then looks completely different? It looks long and it looks smooth like a ballet dancer.
Yes.
That's called ankle extension. When you go downhill, because your foot reaches down, your ankle goes into a type of extension. In fact, you mentioned this the other day about on the first podcast we did with this on Friday. You mentioned how the lower leg, when they reach out and land, sometimes the lower leg looks like it's angled backwards. It is because people tend to reach. But what happens is the back leg is supposed to push you as you're rotating into the front leg so you can move the ankle from being back by the back of the shoe into the tongue position next to the tongue. And if a pitcher doesn't do that, he reaches out and then he just stays back there. That means his center of mass didn't move forward. He's not going to be behind the ball with all his body weight. He's not going to have his hand released close to the plate, and it's all because he didn't have a strong ankle. The ability of the ankle, the mobility of it, the stability of it, and the ability of it to hold that kind of flexion in place is the most critical feature of having a solid delivery so that the pitcher can go right around the leg and then literally support his body weight completely through everything. Is all that making sense?
Yeah, I think yes, absolutely. And the kind of the big takeaway for me is that this drill has huge value because I think a lot of guys don't do this and what you're displaying in the video because they don't know what it feels like to be there. And so this is a good drill to give them that feeling. I think everybody learns differently, but this is really a good solid way for them to really feel what it's like to be in this position. And I don't think a lot of guys understand how strong and I'm using how strong it feels and how much your front leg, how much you use your front leg when you pitch. I don't think a lot of guys really understand how much you use it. And this, I think, drill gives you the feeling of that.
Yes. And that's a great point, Larry, because pitchers are field athletes.
Mm-hmm.
When you were a pitcher, you know how important it was to feel things. Even if you were making a little adjustment with a pitch, you had to feel that pitch in your hand. You had to feel everything. Pitchers are field athletes. And that's why to all the coaches out there, get your strength coach involved in this. You tell your strength coaches, listen, we love that you're going to do squats and this and that and the other, but we need you to teach this skill. This is a skill. And you're right, that they don't have the feel for it. That's why the rules in teaching motion, first you explain it through the brain. And everybody, I'm actually teaching you the way I teach my pitchers. You explain it first, then you show them, and then you make them do it, even if you had that, one hand holding onto something, so they could feel the forward tilt, so they understand the ankle position and the knee. And you, of course, as a strength coach, have to teach a pitcher how to rotate his pelvis and get into this position. Some guys do it normally, but you might see some guy rounding his pelvis. You've got to be able to fix that. But strength coaches know how to do that. That's our job. But they've got to understand it, and then they've got to feel it. And they've got to feel it on the surface that's flat first. But then you have to get them on the downhill because the ankle has to process more. It's more challenged. That's why pulling the leg back is an easy way out from doing this. And yes, what the pitcher's doing is pulling himself backwards to get stability because he knows he's going to be turning around that front leg, but he's paying a price of velocity. Absolutely, because his hand cannot be as close to the plate. He's also, once you do something incorrectly, you can't repeat that perfectly each time. When you do something correctly, you can repeat it each time. It's as simple as that because our bodies are designed like that. So when you're taking the strongest part of your body and you're making it more stable, and it all starts with the foot. Everything starts from the ground up. Now, one thing I want to mention, Larry, because we were talking about this on the last podcast when I was getting all upset about why don't they make changes to the pitchers? Why do they let the pitch? I'm always defending because I think pitchers are left out in the cold, and it upsets me. And so you were saying, and you brought up the great point. Yes, you don't want to touch his arm. Not so much you're afraid you're going to change him. You're afraid you're going to hurt him. And you know what I thought? That's smart. Because when I see a pitching coach leave a pitcher alone, in fact, sometimes a pitching coach from a school will come to me and say, Angel, I can't help this kid. I don't know what he's doing. It's over my head. And then I'll look at him and I'm like, you know what? Congratulations. You shouldn't have touched him. I think it's smart. The guys who are really a mess, there's so much a mess, you don't know where to start. Plus, they're throwing strikes. I don't blame you. I'd rather see a coach back off. Here's the cool thing about this adjustment, Larry. You're not touching his arm. You're touching his leg, which is going to affect his arm. And that's what's going to be so cool about it.
Those are the best kind of adjustments.
Yes, because guess what? Your arm is, I say this to my pitchers, and when they really get it, they go, wow. If you think right now, feel your legs, they come out of the same place, your two hip joints, they're stable, they're moving you around. But now move up your body, feel your pelvis up to your waistline, feel your rib cage up through the shoulders and end. You're a rectangular kind of square there. Yes, we can bend forward. And yes, we can twist sideways. But that's like a solid piece of concrete. You want to think of it that way. Your arms are dangling off the side of it, but they're located right next to the top of that piece of concrete. If you move from the center, from that trunk, your arms will always go in the same place because they're connected to it. So if you think of it that way, if you always move from there, your arm will go in the same place each time. Now, if we want to use that in our heads, like, yeah, I want to pitch when they say pitch from the hips, they're not saying down in the leg. Your hips are next on the side of your body. It's where the muscles that move us sideways are right where when you put your hands on your hips when you're thinking about something. They're right there. If you're going to move from there and you're going to use your trunk as this real stable thing because you know it'll deliver the arms, what has to be solid? The thing that it's working on top of in your pelvis is moving on top of your two legs, just like your tires, and then you turn and the tires turn and the car's moving on top of that. That's how the legs are, and the pelvis and the rest of your body is moving on top of that. So if you are changing the stability of the legs, then you're allowing the trunk to do the motion, just like we saw in Dallas. All of that, none of that center of his body changed. Therefore, his arm was going in the same place each time. That's why the legs have to be strong. So here you are. Let's say your intent is to be consistent, but your foot's falling all over. Or you fall to the left every time you pitch because, let's say you're a righty and you fall to the left because your left ankle gave out. And let's say it rolled to the outside. Well, here's the thing. When you see somebody, and the first thing I look at on a pitcher is how he finishes. I've done this since day one because I know about stability. If you see a pitcher fall during or immediately following the ball release, his body was off balance prior to that. And if his body was off balance prior to that, he was not behind the ball in a secure way. Sometimes he might locate that fastball, and sometimes he might not. If he's falling, he's falling. It might work sometimes, it might not. And he's going to be manipulating that ball to try to not be on the side of it. If you've got a body that's falling to the left, let's say a righty, he's falling to the left. As he goes towards the left with his whole body, his right arm is going to go more sideways than forward. What happens when the arm goes too sideways? He's on the side of the ball, or he might be under it. Two things we don't want during the delivery, the ball release part of the pitch. So Larry, if the lefty is falling off, and let's say he's falling off not because his ankle's weak. Maybe when he did his stride, he stepped across his body. You guys call it stepping across. His right leg would land too far to the left. So now he's turning. He's on a tightrope. Now he can't look like Dallas looked. He can't look balanced. So now his foot's in trouble. So now he's going to be swinging around the left side of his body, and he's off balance. And so then he's going to have this crazy arm action. And yes, sometimes you guys think it's cool and you go, wow, he's really hiding the ball. Well, he's hiding it because he's spinning around and he's using his arms for balance. And so then that arm just comes out when it needs to. And that's why nobody sits around going, this is bad. He places his foot too far across his body. Nobody corrects it because the guys who are in the major league that do it, they use it efficiently and they get the job done. And some of them are considered some of the best pitchers, but they also end up injured a lot. And also, there can be a lot of inconsistency. But the main thing that happens to these great pitchers is they don't get greater as they go along. DeGrom has increased his velocity because he's improved everything as the years have gone on. Pitchers that are solid can improve through their whole career. So stability in the front leg, the placement, using your body and knowing that it's all about where that foot is and how well you can stabilize. And that actually gives you more consistency than anything else. So here we are. You don't have to touch the pitcher's arm. I've always respected a pitcher's arm. My philosophy is not to touch it unless you have to. And I start with the ground up because guess what? I can make an adjustment in the foot, the ankle, the knee, the hip, the low back, and the trunk before I ever even have to touch the arm. And it's usually by passing through that order of adjustments, by the time you get to the arm, it's absolutely doing exactly what that pitcher knows how to do.
Great stuff.
So it's safe. It's really safe.
I think the guys that have, I don't know, I think the guys that have done it for a while, or the guys that have, or girls or whoever, pitching coaches who have done this for a while, that's probably the same. I think they grow to understand that's probably one of the better philosophies, or one of the better ways to handle teaching. And just the arm. I don't want to go to the arm first. Well, what's causing it? I want to try to address the body if there's any adjustments that need to be made, and then that usually fixes or addresses what you're trying to address.
Exactly. So let's open up the next photo, which is number 4. Now, this is an exercise that's done in the gym. You can do it on the field with all your pitchers, but this is a lunge. Everybody does it. But when you're doing an exercise, and I want every coach to hear this, when your guys are out on the field doing traditional warm-up things for the body, you have them lunge across the field. You have them do side lunges. You have them do things that are absolutely perfect. But when I'm out on the field and I see the way the team is doing it, I'm like, it looks so bad. But if you can identify and teach them technique, tell them why they're doing it. So here's a lunge, and he's standing on the left. That's his start and his finish. Notice on the right when he lunged out, Larry, look at the ankle and the knee. That's an athletic knee. Now he's lunging, so he's down a little lower. But if this were a landing, he's a lefty, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
If he were landing for pitching, I'd want that thigh up a little higher. Do you see that? Can you even tell if he were up a little higher? Let's pretend he's striding and he's landing. Can you see how if that thigh were up higher, he would have maybe even a little more strength?
Yeah, he's a little deep, and them as a byproduct of that, would his knee kind of work just a little bit further?
Yes,
just a little bit.
Exactly. Yeah. And what I want to see a pitcher do is I want to see him stop that knee. So as he lunges forward, so in this picture here, the way I would critique this is I would want that knee the foot goes out, the ankle goes forward. He knows just where to stop that foot.
Mm-hmm.
And he's not violating. So when we draw a line from the knee down to the foot, he's still in the forefoot. And in the middle of the foot, Larry, the bones are flat. So that's where your strength is, right from the tongue right to the toe. You got a lot of little bones in the toes. You got a lot of little bones in the ankle. So the foot strength is there. He hasn't violated it, but for me, I'd want that knee back a little bit, and then his thigh would be higher. Now imagine a pitcher landing this low.
Yeah.
When we look at this, can you see how the energy of his thigh is going downward?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And because it's downward, the energy of his back leg is going downward.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if let's pretend he's pitching. So he's not doing anything wrong in this lunge. But if he were pitching, we had that lower body. where would the energy be going? Down. We want it up through the foot, up through the thigh, into the hips, into the pelvis, so we can do all the turning. And the angular velocity is developed from the turning. It doesn't develop from the stride. We would see a lot of energy being dissipated. So if he were pitching, if we didn't look at his upper body and we saw that as a stride landing, and then he's already square to the plate, we'd want to lift him up a little bit, right? And then he could be on top of the ball.
Mm-hmm.
On top, i.e., behind it. He could do exactly what he needed to do. So in the gym, this is a great exercise for teaching how to reach out and land and find the right angles. And of course, it's a great leg development because the finish position of a pitch is the lunge position. So this is how, but you would want to instruct him and make the connection between the lunge and the ankle and knee position. So this is a great simple exercise. And you can do this on the field and make this a warm up and make sure the pitchers understand. In fact, in the gym, we go lower because we're doing thigh development. So he's actually doing a pretty perfect lunge, and he's not dropping the back knee too much. But if we were going to, let's say when I'm working with his landing, let's say if I were doing this not for strength, this isn't a gym exercise. Let's say it's going to be a stride exercise. I would have him land higher. I would put him downhill doing this. He would do lunges downhill just like this. That would force him to find his ankle and to find his knee angle. So that's how you can take a simple exercise that everybody knows how to do and make it into a strength movement for what we're trying to do to improve our pitcher's front leg.
Right. And for me, I think it's a good teaching tool to use about the stride direction.
Exactly.
Because you'd land even with what would be in this case, if he's left-handed, he would land in a more direct line from his left heel.
Yes. And also, too, do you notice his 2 feet have some separation between them, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay. If you were standing behind him, you could see both feet. This is
Correct.
why imagine that lunge. Imagine him taking his right leg. And let's still imagine him doing an exercise. So he's in the gym. He's got that weight on his shoulders. He takes the right leg and he steps it over in front of the left one. You see what would happen? Now, and it would be dangerous, right? And he's got weight on his shoulders. And his body would be doing everything it can to keep him up from falling because that's our body's number one job, and it's good at it. The spine would be configuring itself to keep us from going over. Imagine the job it has to do that. Why would you want to do that if you're getting ready to deliver the ball? The objective is to deliver the ball forward with quality and with some control over your delivery so you can be available for the magic at the last moment that the wrist and the fingers have to do. And remember, when you're falling, you are always using your arms for balance, and the ball is in the fingertips, and it's delicate where they are. And we know the grip has to be solid. We know that more than ever now. We know the wrist has to do a certain thing. Why would you want that arm sort of flailing, being responsible to keep you up because you're off balance, instead of, hey, it's just there next to my arm and my body's bringing my arm right where I want it to? You see, that's how I'm an analytical kinesiologist. I look at body parts in that kind of way. So that's why I can look and say, oh, this guy, his pitches are nasty, but wow, he's on a tightrope, or he looks crazy when he finishes. That bothers me because I know that pitcher could be even better.
I think of him do the lunge and do it on a balance beam about 3 feet up in the air and see how, it's not very stable, or your balance is not going to be very good. It's going to be really tough to do. Just, you talked about doing it on a tightrope. I think of a balance beam elevated. Think about how hard and difficult that would be.
Exactly. Exactly. And listen, just by changing that, and again, when you change the lower body, you're protecting the arm and the shoulder. And in fact, it will come through better. So, and these are simple things. Like if the guy who crosses over,
Yeah.
I say, they all put their cleats on. I say, go get your tennis shoe. Gets his tennis shoe. I say, okay, put it down. And I measure how he should land. And I put the shoe, his shoe backwards on the mound down. And I say, you don't have to reach it, but I want you to land in line with it.
Mm-hmm.
They cannot believe the difference it makes. Then you train that. And again, that's a trainable thing. And also you make the connection. Maybe you have them stand on the mound. You go, hey, do a lunge for me. They lunge out. Okay, now do it again, but this time take your right leg. Let's say he's a lefty. Take your right leg, and when you lunge, I want you to lunge and land way over to your left. He goes, no, I won't do it. Or he does it, and he says, no, that's weird. Or his brain won't even let him do it. That's what you're doing when you pitch. But see, they don't make the connection. The other thing about this, and this is a quality thing that I see, talking about being off balance, when pitchers don't land right, they look like they're trying to hurry up and get off that front leg. That's the pitcher to me that looks like he's slapping at the ball rather than going through it because he lands incorrectly or not in a stable way. Let's say he's in the right foot position, but he's not stable. As he's turning, he's going, whoa. And then the ball just comes out of his hand as a result of his spinning over the leg, which isn't stable. And then he looks like he can't wait to get off that leg. So the pitch doesn't look like it is precisely delivered. It looks more like it's a response to what his body was doing. And the front leg starts, as you know, straightening too fast, or he starts falling over too fast. And all that is happening at the moment of release. It's probably, to me, one of the biggest reasons for location problems. When a pitcher has location problems, you need to look at the stability of his front leg, which will tell you about the quality of his movement before he releases the ball. And again, you're not touching his arm. You're not touching his hand. You're touching the base underneath him. So let's open up number 5. So another exercise for in the gym. Here we have Joe, which you guys have seen before in photos. So now we're doing what's called a good morning. But the good morning is a gym exercise that is done with 2 feet underneath the body. But in this case, I have him getting into a stride and he has to stabilize. So look at the ankles. You're seeing that same strong ankle in the front. And see how he goes forward, how he's almost losing his balance. And then I'll say, hey, don't come out of your heel. So then he keeps his heel down. And this is an actual video of repetition. So he actually is making corrections. Now, he's a righty. So now I'm working with his ability to flex over his leg, the ankle, and the knee are in the proper position. Now, if you go to the next photo, so everybody, the video that we're looking at is so the exercise you just saw being done in the gym, which is a single leg good morning, and all your strength coaches know what a good morning is. So obviously here I'm just simulating pitching. Now I've got Joe doing it downhill. Now what you're going to see how his ankle is more towards the tongue of his shoe because now his ankle really has to be strong and his knee has to be strong. And you see how his leg isn't changing because he's smart. He knows in this exercise, he would go forward over his leg and fall with that weight on his shoulders. But what he's doing is he's stabilizing his front leg, and the rear leg is actually giving him the stabilization. So if you notice the rear leg, his hip, for all the strength coaches, his hip is in extension, his quad is in extension, and his ankle's in extension. He's pressing into the ground. The hamstring and the butt muscle are doing the stabilization while the ankle is allowing him to relate to the ground. So he's getting force up from the ground. And that's allowing him to keep the front leg in the exact same position repeatedly. So that is the beauty of taking an exercise and kind of changing it around a little bit to look like pitching, and then also changing the actual ground underneath so that he's actually learning what he has to do to stabilize. See if you can open up number 7, Larry.
Yes, I have it open now.
Okay, awesome. So now I want you to look at, in the first exercise, we did the good morning in a single leg position. Then we took it outside and Joe was doing it downhill so that you could see the adjustment in his ankle and in his knee. Now you get into the gym and you have them use a cable. So the starting position on the left, and you can kind of see the cable coming up. He's not going to be using his arm. So you'll notice his elbow joint on his right arm. And now he's doing this as a righty. So his elbow joint on his arm is not changing. So he's not pulling the cable. The cable's pulling him. That's why I use a cable for this. And I like this much better than a dumbbell. I know strength coaches a lot of times use dumbbells because a cable is trying, you have to use weight to pull it out, and it's trying to pull you back in. So you're always processing forces that are working against you. You can't control it, and that's what pitching is. So now notice him going over the front leg and see what that looks like, Larry.
It's
And
great.
now we have, so this was Chris who was doing the lunge. Now we have him at the right leg angle. Okay, now look where his knee is. He's got the strong ankle, the nice flexion in his knee, flexing in the hip. He's going forward. And depending on the pitcher and his height and everything, I might have him go down lower. It just depends. But his arm is out, and then he comes back up with the exact same angle, and then he heads down again. Now, so what's happening here? Remember, we talked about think of his black shirt as the stable part of his body. It's not changing. It's rotating over the leg, coming up, going over the leg, coming up. That's how you get the arms to go to the same place each time. So here's another beautiful exercise. Now, I love taking that exercise onto the mound without a weight, but just have them get on one leg and go back and forth, back and forth. It actually looks a lot like that follow through drill that we looked at when we first started.
Right.
So that's a great exercise for in the gym. Now, here's another one. Now, this is a step up, which everybody does in the gym. And this is a great exercise for pitchers because it develops their glute muscles and their quads in a way that a pitcher needs to have strong legs. But here's the extra benefit of doing it this way. So a step up is where you step up on a box and then you step down. And there are many different foot patterns you can use, but this is the way I like to work my pitchers. Imagine the pitcher, actually, let's picture Dallas. He's got his leg out, and remember the front leg didn't change at all, Larry? Well, his muscles that are actually controlling that leg, they're not actually, his hip is actually on what we call stretch. His hamstrings are contracted around his knee joint, but that glute muscle in the upper hamstring is on what we call stretch, meaning it's not in a regular contraction. It's actually in what we call an eccentric action. And that's a very specific type of stretch or strength, I should say. And in the pitching motion, when we look at EMG studies, which tells us how much muscles are working at a certain time, that muscle works more than any other muscle in the body during the motion. It's got to be strong. Now, if you do the step up this way, let's picture he's a righty. The right leg comes up. Notice the foot's on the box. Notice the ankle position. His knee's in flexion. And probably I may have wanted this box to be one lower so his front leg could be a little of a better angle that matches maybe what I would want in a stride. But a strength coach can decide. And for here, I was probably working on strength with him. But here's what I want you to do. I want you to notice those angles. Now notice he comes up, second frame here in the middle. He's on the box. But now notice when he lowers, he's not going to take the left leg and go down. He's going to take the right leg down first, which means the left leg is controlling the downward movement. Gravity's pulling his right leg down. He has to work eccentrically in his left leg to control the downward motion because I am having him keep that leg on the ground, on the box. So what he's getting here in the first frame, he's getting what's called a concentric contraction, meaning it's an action. Like if you lift a bicep up, when the dumbbell comes up, that's concentric. When you lower the dumbbell, if you just drop it, gravity worked. But if you resist gravity, it's getting stronger than when it went up. So in the first frame, concentric, and in the third frame, eccentric. And guess what you're doing? You're building that butt strength and that upper hamstring strength that a pitcher needs to stabilize that front leg. So do you see how cool this could be for your strength coaches if they start making these connections? But the main thing is that they explain. It's not just have them do it. Explain why they're doing it.
Right. No, this is good. Really good.
So everybody, we've got just 2 more to go and then we'll be done. Okay, so here we go. Now, everybody has seen this before. You know I love this drill, but now you're going to think about this drill differently. So, Larry, I'm always coming up with this drill and this suggestion for throwers. Why do I like this? Because it takes away all the movement stuff and it teaches just whatever one thing you're using this for. There's a million things you can use it for. But now, in the context of what we've been talking about, look at his leg placement. See how he looks like Dallas, doesn't he?
Mm-hmm.
Keeps the leg right there, comes around, and he's able to take that leg up and swing it around and not fall to the right. He doesn't look like he's falling to his left. He looks like he has stayed right over the front leg. So now you give this to someone, but the context of this is the stability of the ankle and knee. When you're done doing it on flat, bring him to the mound, and then you've got the perfect stability.
Yeah, what sticks out to me is I'm taking the slide bar and going back and forth through the throw, and just watch his right foot, just from just the whole foot in general. Just he doesn't get up on his toes or the balls of his feet. His heel stays in the ground.
Exactly.
Everything just stable. So makes sense.
And guess what? Once again, we're not touching the arm.
Right.
Now I want to challenge it a little more. So this is our last thing, everyone. So after all of that, they learn, they understand. You've had them on the mound, you have them on the gym. Next thing I like to do is let's take him out to the field and let's challenge it. He's been standing still. He's been maybe doing simple things. But now you say, now, I want you on the flat ground and I want you shuffling in and I want to see you plant that front foot. And I do not want to see you falling all over the place. So now he's moving and planting and controlling. And that's how you take this to a challenge of the front ankle. Because what I'm working with here, so watch when Joe puts his foot down and I have the catcher be up. I also have them down so that I challenge. But you notice how he's able to keep his foot in control as he plants? What you're looking for is that the foot goes down and it stays down. He didn't go into his toe. So when you see him wrap his right leg around, even the momentum didn't pull him off his foot. That's what we want to see. In fact, that's the take-home message. Don't let the momentum of your stride pull you off your front foot, because the front foot is everything. And when that's everything, then your back leg can do what it does, which is, believe it or not, stabilizing this whole thing as well. Just like when I was talking about in the downhill good morning, where Joe's rear leg was actually allowing him to go forward. But the rear leg is a topic for another day. But this is the importance of the front leg. And this is why I thank you for giving me the ball again for another inning.
No, it was very great, very thorough. And I think it's great information because when somebody sees a pitcher that they want to help or that's on their club or that may be struggling and they want to help them, I mean, that's a really good place to start is the ground up. Start with what's going on in particular with their front leg. Oh, it's huge.
Yes, I think it's huge too. So anyway, okay, everyone. Well, Larry, first of all, thank you so much for coming back so quickly for our next episode. And I am now feeling very happy that I got this out there. and I think everyone will understand how I felt. And well, if you don't know by now, I am the queen of being thorough. And I don't get any sleep until I am. And I'm relentless about getting the job done, no matter how long it takes. So I appreciate everyone listening. Don't forget, you're going to be able to see this on Angel Borrelli Pitching on YouTube. It's posted on Instagram. You can get this podcast wherever you get your podcasts. And don't forget to reach out to me at angel@gymscience.com if you have any questions. And I've been getting a lot of calls and questions from pitchers and coaches, and keep them coming because I love when I receive them. And Larry, thank you so much for your time as well.
Awesome. Thank you for having me once again.
Okie dokie. I'll talk to all of you in a few weeks. Bye-bye.